Welcome to lesson B in Photoshop, which has to do with selecting pixels. One thing we're going to learn in this unit is that in order to edit any pixels, we're going to have to first make the selections to be able to edit them. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is go to Google Classroom and download our PSB1, which is the file that we need to get started. Remember, yours will look a little bit different than mine. Yours will be automatically in the feed, but we're going to download B1, which should kind of look like a puzzle that we're going to be putting back together after having made some selections. And I still have my crop tool on, so I'm just going to click on my move tool. It'll automatically go away. So double clicking my hand tool to get everything to fit inside here. So the first thing that we're going to do is start talking about some of the marquee tools, which are the most basic tools that Photoshop has in order to make some selections. The rectangular marquee tool is the first one that we're going to use, starting on number 1. So what I'm going to recommend that we do here is get our zoom tool out and zoom in on number 1. Oh, grab my hand tool and kind of reposition here. Zoom in on number 1 so that it kind of fills up our screen so it's nice and easy to see here. So our rectangular marquee tool is the second tool on our toolbar. It looks like a little square with a white dotted line. Go ahead and click on that marquee tool. Notice that our options bar changes. We're not going to talk about this too much quite yet, but we will eventually. Notice that when you come out into your picture, that your mouse has changed to a little crosshair. So essentially what we want to try to do is we want to line our crosshair up at the very top left corner of our square here, and we're going to click and drag, and then we're going to try to line it up as accurately as possible. This is why it's a good idea to be nice and zoomed in so that you can make a nice clean selection of those pixels, because the cleaner the selection, obviously the better the puzzle is going to look. Now, if for some reason you were up here and you didn't quite get it lined up, and notice how when I am dragging the selection that I've got a little bit of white area along here. If you ever need to deselect, all you have to do is do a Control D. Otherwise, you can also go up to Select and hit Deselect, which will just get rid of your selection and allow you to start again. So like I said, we want to make sure that this is as accurate as possible. I'm going to line this up nice and neat and let go. And then I'm going to grab my hand tool and double click so that I can see my whole entire screen. So you should notice now that we have a selection made, or that marquee that goes around that black and white dotted line means that we've made that selection. Okay. Our next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to grab our move tool right over here. Move tool is the very top tool on our toolbar. And notice that when you bring it out into your picture and you hover over the marquee, it turns to a black arrow with a little scissors, which just means that if we were to click and drag, we're going to be able to move our little selection over and drop it down into the space where we had this missing square. So we want to line it up as best as we can. If it's hard to see, you can always get your zoom tool out and zoom in over here and line it up. And then if you need to adjust it, you can grab your move tool and you can move it around a little bit, but mine looks pretty good. I'm going to line it up as best I can, and when I'm happy with where it is, I'm going to deselect. If you deselect and you're not happy, you're going to be in trouble because it's going to be hard to make that selection when it's not on that white background. So make sure that you're happy with how it looks before you do a Control D and deselect. And then you can hit your hand tool and go back, and it should look, if you made a good selection, it should kind of blend in really nice and smooth. Okay, so that was using our rectangular marquee tool. Notice that our next one we're going to work with is this kind of two squares put together. So we're going to grab our zoom tool again. We're going to zoom in on our number 2 here. And so what we're going to have to do here is we're going to have to make a selection, and then we're going to have to add to that selection. So again, since this is a rectangle, we're going to use our rectangular marquee tool. So I'm going to go back up to my rectangular marquee. I'm going to come over here, and again, lining up as best as I can. I'm going to click and drag, and notice that I wasn't lined up very good. I've got some white area up here, so I'm going to deselect. I might actually zoom in just a little bit more. Oh, too far. There we go. Okay, rectangular marquee, trying to get that as lined up as possible. And I'm going to select the top square first. Make sure you're lined up on both sides and let go. And now what we're going to do is you have to hold your shift key down. Notice when I hold my shift key that on my mouse I have my crosshair and then I have a little plus sign that's with it. So I'm going to go down here to my bottom right corner and line it up as best as I can. And clicking and drag, notice I'm still holding my shift key down because I still have that little plus sign. And I'm going to line up this square, and don't let go until you know that you're right at the edges, and then you can. And notice that now your marquee is going to run all the way around this entire thing. So I'll do this one more time just in case you didn't quite get that. I'm going to deselect. So just using my regular rectangle marquee tool, I'm going to select my first square. Of course, now I had a good marquee and then I deleted it. So here we go. Get this one going. Let go. Holding my shift key, I go down to my other bottom right corner to start. Line it up. And then pull upwards. Making sure both of my sides are lined up nice and neat. And then I release. And I have my full marquee. So what you need to remember about this demonstration is that to add to a selection, you need to hold your shift key down. So now we're going to do the same steps that we did before. I'm going to double click my hand tool, grab my move tool, hover over my selection, and then I'm going to grab it and move it over to my puzzle and drop it in there. I'm also going to grab my zoom tool and just zoom in. So you can see I'm a little off. One thing that you can do is if you're pressed on your move tool, you can actually use your arrow keys to better line up your selection if you don't want to have to use your mouse. Sometimes I like to just use my arrow keys because that's nice and easy to do it that way. So once I have it in there again and I'm happy with it, I'm going to deselect and double click my hand tool to go back, and we will do number 3 next. So grab your zoom tool and we'll zoom in on number 3 here. So with this one again, it's still a square, so we're going to use our rectangular marquee again, but this time we have a spot in the middle where we're going to need to take away from our selection. So obviously the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do our outside large rectangle marquee. So I'm going to grab that tool again, come back over and do the outside, clicking and dragging to make my selection. And I jolted my finger there. I am currently using my mouse pad, and one thing that I would highly recommend when you're making selections is to use your mouse, just because I find that it's a lot more accurate than trying to slide your fingers around on your mouse pad. It's easy to make a mistake, so I would recommend using the mouse. I don't have mine with me right now, so I'm using my mouse pad, and it's a little finicky to do it that way. So once you have your outside one selected, in order to take away from a selection, we need to hold our Shift key down. Or excuse me, not Shift, the Alt key down. So find Alt on your keyboard, and notice that when you hit your Alt key, oops, of course, then I went ahead and bumped something and deleted my marquee here. So let me make that selection again real quick. Okay, so we hold our Alt key down. Well, okay, well, we're just having a bugger of a time trying to do this without my mouse. I keep bumping things, but hopefully maybe it's going better for you in the classroom right now. So when you hit your Alt key, there it finally is. Can you see that on the screen, that I have my plus sign or my little crosshair, and then I have a little negative sign, which means that when I hit my Alt key, it's going to be taking away from this selection. So I want to line it up where the white area is, and I'm going to make the selection inside of here, line it up as best I can, and then release. And so when I have done that, what that means is this little white area is going to get taken away. So again, I know I said Shift in the beginning. Shift is to add to a selection. Alt is to take away from a selection. So when we go ahead and hit our hand tool right now, you'll see that we have the selection made with a hole in the middle. We're going to grab our Move tool and hover over our third selection. We're going to move it out here, and we're going to bring it over and drop it in the section. If you notice, I made maybe not such a clear selection here. You can see I left a little bit, and that's okay. They don't have to be perfect. We want to try to do our best, but obviously if you leave a little behind, it's not the end of the world. So we want to try to line this up as best as we can. If you need to, again, use your arrow keys on your keyboard. That can line it up really nicely. And then once you have it in place, again, Control D to deselect. And that, my friends, is working with our rectangular marquee tool, and then adding to a selection with the Shift button, or taking away from a selection with the Alt key. So in the next video, we're going to work with a few of our other selection marquee tools, which is the ellipse or the elliptical marquee tool, and then we're also going to look at something called the lasso tool. So, make sure you, maybe it would be a good idea if we saved this right now, just in case something happens. So let's just do a file save as, and we'll put this in our Web Design 1 folder in our lessons, and we can just leave it as B1. We know that we're in our first lesson of Lesson B, so we'll just save it there, just in case, depending upon how long it's going to take to get through the rest of these. Okay, and we'll see you in the next video.